This is the first book in this entire series in which I can clearly get a sense that the author has dropped all pretensions and has openly decided to go into pure fiction in his exploration of the mind. Apparently, he didn't see any point in going through any actual transition between the original set of books and this one. So if you wish to learn more about the development of one of Earth's most recent religions and cultural phenomena, stay tuned. Welcome to Bibliocultist, where I review books that I find interesting in the topics of religion, philosophy, history, and fiction. Please remember, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video. If you do these things, it really helps the channel grow, so I appreciate it. I'm also going to drop my Ko-Fi account on the side here where you can donate, tip me, whichever amount you wish. It really helps out, so even if it's a little bit, whatever you do, it really does help the process of growing the channel, so I appreciate it. My merch store can be seen there as well, and I'm going to put my X account at the bottom if you have a book that you want to suggest that I review. In this episode, I'm continuing my Scientology series, and this book is called A History of Man, and it's by L. Ron Hubbard, and it's published by Bridge Publications 2007. Now, this is the first book, like I mentioned in the intro, that does an actual diving into sci-fi territory. What I don't understand is why he would do this. Probably I find it shocking because it's quite a jump and it's abrupt. Remember, I've been going through each of his published books in order of publishing, so I can see a development. And I've mentioned in other parts of the series, where you can see in my Scientology playlist, that he starts out with a theory of the mind, a psychiatry school in a way. And he is very reticent in speculating too much. I mean, of course, his book is a theory, so there's speculation there, but he's quite cautious about not expanding his opinions beyond certain points. So it gives it an air of credibility, and as you go through the initial books, a lot of the stuff he's saying is interesting. His human behavior chart is actually great, and the theories about the unconscious are also pretty interesting. So a lot of that stuff he keeps kind of close to the chest. And as he develops, he starts changing things, and it becomes kind of weird, of course, but he never dives into sci-fi straight up. This is the first book that I actually see it. So it's a short book, but he does such a huge jump into this realm that it becomes fascinating to me. So I'm going to go over some of the main topics and some of the things that are curious to me. First, Hubbard had already explored previous lives. So in this book, he divides the mess body, matter, energy, space, and time, the material body, our body. He divides that from the theta being, which most religions will call the soul. But then the theta is split up into different multiplicities. So you have multiple theta beings that can occupy one body, but then you also have the theta itself being split in parts. And adding that to the equation is another change to his previous works, because he tended to like his system clean, so he would cleanly delineate things. So in the first few books, he would argue that there may be something out there that is beyond the body, but that's not his business because there's no evidence for it. And then little by little, he starts saying, well, there is some evidence, I've seen it through processing, that there is other lives, maybe, could be. And then as time goes by in each book, he starts introducing this. So by the time you get to this book, he has already introduced a lot of this stuff. So now he's very comfortable saying that there are multiple living souls or thetas that are inhabiting bodies, and each theta itself is split up in pieces and traumas. So now when you're being treated, you're treating like an entire gang of people, which is fascinating. But like I said, it gets weird. So let me give a quote. The theory of the epicenters applies very particularly along the messed evolutionary line. This theory holds that in any given generation on the evolutionary line, the sum of its counter efforts will form in the next generation the new command post. Every central relay point of the nerve system has been, at some point or another, on the evolutionary line, a command post or a sub-command post of the organism. As the organism develops these command posts, each one is subjected to new counter-efforts which form the area of the new command post. Thus, the body has many old command posts from which the somatic mind, or GE, controlled all the responses of the body. The funny bone in the elbow is the old sub-command post, an old epicenter. And it goes on from there, but it's quite strange because now you're talking about the thetas not only occupying bodies but creating command posts within the body that, as the evolutionary line continues, it changes throughout the body so that you could have them in the toe, you could have them in the ear, you could have them in the heart, you could have them in the liver. And this is how he explains conditions on these things, almost like a phantom pain or a phantom trauma. And these areas will control certain aspects of the body in the old days. Now you have to find the one that controls it now. But he doesn't really explain or justify how this is possible or if it makes any sense at all. And of course, to some of you, it may make sense, but to me, it just doesn't. It seems like a way around a lot of issues that he just doesn't know how to explain. But it gets even stranger. At some point, he's discussing the genetic line. So this is basically like a karma, but a karma through genetics, through evolution, because that's the main topic of this book. And there's a section where he starts talking about the different types of trauma that persist because of what happened in your old evolution. One of them he calls the clam. And let me read this part here. Quote, "It is interesting that immobile states are most liable to have heavy incidents. It is also interesting that bulbous seaweed, uprooted and cast ashore by storms, gave man some of his early experiences with sunlight and the absence of water. A distinct somatic of drying and itching is felt by pre-clears when they encounter these incident stimulation of the drying outer skin of the dying seaweed." So, as you can see there, he's saying, because we used to be seaweed in the evolutionary line, which again, it's an oversimplification of Darwin's theory. And I actually think Darwin's theory is itself an oversimplification. And a lot of times it leads to ridiculous conclusions. And this obviously is a great example. So every time you're itching or you're dry, it's because you have some trauma when you were a seaweed. And this is why. That's kind of weird. Now, he has another one that I think is pretty funny, and it's called the weeper. And here's a quote. "If you make a pre-clear go through all the physical motions of sobbing convulsively, no matter what his emotion may be, he may connect with the weeper. Belching, gasping, sobbing, choking, shuddering, trembling are all manifestations of emotional dramatization of the weeper." And by the way, the weeper would be the sea creature that millions of years ago, like a clam, came out of the oceans and now has all this issue with water and the waves coming in and drowning it and then being on the shore. So he's taking each evolutionary step from a very simplistic Darwinian model, and he's saying we have gone through all these trauma. So as amphibians, as plankton, etc. Here's another kind of insane one that I think is somewhat funny. Quote, "It has been suggested that smoke and tobacco is a sort of dramatization of volcanoes, which at the least were spectacular." So again, you live near a volcano, you suffered this experience, so now you want to be a volcano yourself and you puff smoke. I mean, it's creative, but at the same time, it's kind of silly. But he has a lot of these. Now, in this book, he mentions the Piltdown Man, and he talks about how a man like that is freakish and lacks logic, and the teeth of the Piltdown Man were like an ape's, and he goes through the entire explanation of how that's a condition. You can actually treat someone psychologically because they have the Piltdown Man issue, because we used to be the Piltdown Man. Of course, I find this to be quite an Achilles heel because the Piltdown Man has been proven to be a forgery, a false finding. It was a fake. But Hubbard didn't know this at the time because it was discovered a little bit later. So it is somewhat embarrassing that he would derive an entire system of treatment and even a name for the condition of the Piltdown Man, and it's a fake. So it discredits a lot of what he's saying for sure. There's also a section on past deaths, and he's arguing that because there's plenty of Thetas that have died, then they have experienced death so many times that they are, in a weird way, creating traumas of death. So you have death trauma upon death trauma. And remember, the genetic entity, that line, has died many times. And then there's the souls that have gone through the experience of the bodies dying. So you have multiple death trauma that has captured every living entity, especially human beings. So again, it creates a very complex system of treatment that I don't think it's possible to ever get out of it as a maze. It seems to me that basically there has been a complete abandonment of any scientific pretense in this book that you did find in previous books. For example, quote, one of the processes Thetans used on messed bodies was a half-light, half-black gun which shot out a wave. Half of the wave, usually the black, hit the right side of the victim's body. The other half in the same explosion, usually the left side of the victim. This had the effect of causing him to be two people. It is also the basic on half paralysis, such as strokes. There was not always regularity in this incident. Sometimes it was the practice to shoot the victim one way and then turn him around and shoot him the other. Sometimes the sides and heads as well. So as you can see, now you have ray guns with different colors that cause trauma. So if I have a pain on this side of the body, it's because it was probably shot this way or the other. So as you can see, it starts building on the sci-fi component. And at certain points in this book, I get the feeling that Hubbard may be messing with us in a huge psyop kind of joke. And I mean this literally. I get that feel that maybe he's just making fun of us. For example, quote, Fact 1 deteriorated down the years, became quite varied with the colonization of Earth about 35,000 years ago, or up to 70,000 in a very few cases. When used, Fact 1 was quite non-standard, but it has been used on Earth against some pre-clears. Now, this name, Fact 1, which is Facsimile 1, is really funny to me because it sounds like he's making fun of his audience. And anyway, it's pure sci-fi as well, because he's throwing these years out and these stations and these treatments with lasers done by these beings. So a lot of that is just being thrown out there all of a sudden. You also have this, quote, at death, the Theta being leaves the body and goes to the between lives area. Here, he reports in, is giving a strong forgetter implant, and is then shut down to a body just before it is born. At least that is the way the old invader in the Earth area was operating. So there are many examples, but that gives you a taste. I mean, he's going straight up, full sci-fi, laser guns, planet stations, implants, injections, multiple souls, multiple bodies. He went all in. Now, to me, the question is, why is this happening? It seems to be a very weird transition. It makes no sense to me, because he could have kept his system clean of these things, maybe hint at them from a distance, but why go all wild on this sci-fi scenario? Again, if you have a theory, drop it in the comments, but there's a side of me that thinks that he is some kind of prankster, that there's a low-key element to him, a dark jester, because it is difficult for me to read his previous books and then read this one and believe that the same man is capable of just going wildly creative to this level. But let's say he's not a genius troll of some kind. This means that he did always believe in this in one way or the other, and he was slowly introducing it into his system. That's possible. He believes this will make what he's doing a true religion, because he's adding myth, he's adding fiction. Could be a cynical way of creating a religion by a cynical man who doesn't believe in religion. So my intent is not to offend people that believe in this stuff per se, but I have to be very straightforward on how I perceive the books. I'm not sure I will find a lot of views in the series from this particular point forward, because it's just weird and it doesn't seem to have any element that is useful. At some point in the book, after he goes through the whole thing about being fish and birds and algae. And then at the end, he goes into processing and how to fix a lot of these issues. It's almost impossible for me to read it and take it seriously at all. And besides, he has built a scenario that is so impossible to fix that I don't think reading how to fix something like that is relevant anymore. You're basically screwed. If you have so much trauma because you have millions of years of evolution in you, plus thousands of different living entities that invade you, a group of galactic gangsters who traumatize you and wash your brain and inject you with stuff and pass you around like that, then really I don't see a way of ever recuperating from this. So then what's the point of your treatment? I will try my best to continue the series, but it will take me a longer time. So check out my playlist on Scientology and you'll be able to see books up to this point in the series. And then, like I said, it might take me longer to go through the other ones because I don't really see much of a point from this place forward. Unless he goes even wilder and it could be funny and entertaining. But beyond that point, I don't see much of a use. But I have the books, so I will go slowly through them when I get in the mood. So hopefully you enjoyed this review and reflection. Please remember, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, like the video, share the video, comment on the video. Thank you for being with me. See you next time.